Hello and welcome everyone to First Impressions with LT. Today we are going to be covering the newly released game State of Mind. State of Mind was published and developed by the award-winning Daedalic Entertainment and was released on August 15th of 2018. Now, that's what the Steam page will tell you, but for some reason, when I actually bought the game that day, it wouldn't let me play it or install it till the next day, and I checked the forums and leaderboards, or not the leaderboards, but the forums on Steam, and that seemed to be a very common issue for a lot of people. So, just to recap how I do this for everyone here, I start by running down objectively what the game is, what I know from the game so far, and how I felt playing the game, my opinions on the game, and then finally, I give my conclusions of the game as a whole. All the while, the background music will be music from the game, and my first 10 or so minutes of gameplay will be the visual that you get there. Now, just to go over what a first impression is again with everybody, it's important to note this is not a review. I've only logged about an hour and a half of gameplay into the game, so I can only give you my initial thoughts. That said, I do plan to release a full review in the future after I logged 40 or so hours into the game and or beaten it, whichever comes first, assuming that I take the time to play through the game, which some games I don't do. Now, it's also important to note that I am playing this game on my computer, on a PC, with a gamepad, and that I've not done any research into the game before playing it. These are purely my first impressions of the game, without any previous knowledge of what the game is or how it works. This is just me playing and telling you guys how I feel about it. So, if you're newer to the game, it'll be a perfect first impressions for you here. What is State of Mind? It's a sci-fi game set in the near future. The year is 2048, to be exact. I believe it is classified as a story-driven action-adventure game. And it is definitely story-heavy and story-driven. Well, at least story-heavy. It is a story-heavy game. It seems to focus a lot on dialogue trees and exploration to really drive the plot. The story of the game follows the lives of our two main protagonists, Richard Nolan and Adam Newman. To be exact, Richard Nolan, just to tell you a little bit about the characters are a lot alike. I think this is intentional. I'm not going to come up with any, tell you guys any of my theories about the game. If you want to see that, you can watch my LT Plays series, where it actually covers me playing it live, and I'll talk about the different theories that I'm having while I'm having them. But to avoid spoilers, I'll just tell you what little bit of information I have about the characters through the first hour and a half of gameplay. So Richard Nolan, our main protagonist that we start with, he hates robots and prefers people. Think, iRobot with Will Smith. Will Smith's character. Hates robots, prefers people. He's having an affair. He has a gifted child named James. He's a journalist who works for a company called The Voice. He lives in Germany in the year 2048. The beginning of the game is him waking up from a car crash, and he blames the car crash on electronics for the electronics of the car. The cars in this world are all self-driven. This is a sci-fi game, and that's one of the things that they, I think, did pretty well, is the different background, things like that. He is looking for his son and his wife, and he's trying to figure out what happened to him and the details about the accident. And that's essentially also all we have as far as what drives his plot line, too. So that's important to keep in mind. Adam Newman, on the other hand, the other protagonist that we play as, we also are introduced to him as he wakes up from a car accident. So, keep that in mind. He also seems to like robots, instead of hating them, and he prefers them over people for most things. So, the opposite of Richard. He is happily married. He has a gifted child named John, instead of a gifted child named James. He is a journalist, but he works for a company called The Present, and he's living, it doesn't say directly, but it strongly hints at the fact that he is living on Mars during the time, and it is the year 2048. He wakes up from a car crash, as I was saying, and he blames the car's electronics for the crash as well. The only thing we really know about him that seems to be driving the story with him is that he's trying to figure out the details of what happened to him. Playing through the game, both the stories take place at the same spot on the timeline. However, you only control one of them at a time, switching back and forth between the protagonists after events occur in each life. Sometimes the events are super minor, like dropping your child off at the clinic. Sometimes the events are more, substantial, your character going to sleep for 17 hours, for instance. After playing the game for about an hour and a half, this is what I know so far about the world that State of the Mind takes place in. So this is what I know about the background info so far. The whole Earth is divided into only two countries, the West and the East. There is a lot of civil unrest. This world really is like it's a world on the brink. Brink of war, brink of chaos, civil strife, etc. They're looking for people to send to Mars. There are robots everywhere, including robots that look like humans. I don't know how substantial that'll be to the plot so far, but that's there. There's lots of advanced technology, and even each one of the people have like AR, augmented reality devices installed in them, which is our actual HUD screen as we walk around. That's how they excuse that. The Earth is becoming unstable, and the people on Mars have to deal with things called geohazards, which are just earthquakes. So it's like Mars is unstable as well. Now to just kind of cover how I felt playing the game. Playing the game so far felt pretty good at first. The start menu was nice and simple with access to the options menu from the beginning. I really appreciate that. A minor note here was that it did seem pretty obvious that the game was made with a controller in mind. I started the game without my gamepad even plugged in, and it still gave me all the options of, it still said press A to do this, press B to do that, and it was only after pressing a key or two that it changed to giving me instructions, in keyboard instructions, like press E. Now, after pressing start, I was immediately met with a cinematic of the game. Told us that the year is 2048, that we are in Germany. Cinematic does a pretty good job of showing us that the world has a lot of civil strife in it, as well as this being definitely a sci-fi setting with self-driving cars, robot police, and easy access to flying transportation. It was also immediately apparent that, as you can see in the background, the art of the game is a unique polygon build that appears to be overlaid on a quasi-realistic background. The end of our cinematic introduces us to our main protagonist, Richard Nolan. He's currently in an ambulance after being involved in a car accident. I'll be going into more of my thoughts on the art style choices in just a bit. But it is it is weird. We are then taken through a short and sweet tutorial after we wake up from the cinematic that teaches us about the essential info on how to play the game and the controls, but also demonstrates pretty well that the game will take place mostly via dialogue trees and finding exposition clues in the background. Now, something about the tutorial is that there are not many mechanics in the game. The game is a very mechanics-like game, so the tutorial should be able to cover everything, but the tutorial never even taught me how to run around, and that's going to be substantial in a second, because next we're on to my thoughts on the game. The game definitely feels like it was made with a controller in mind, but that it should work fine on a keyboard, because it is so simple, and the game so far is extremely mechanic-light. The art choice is really interesting, though. While the characters art never really changes, the background art goes from matching the characters and being a polygon-based environment to being realistic. And that gives the game a really trippy feeling at times, especially when used in combination with the fact that the game is constantly switching between two characters that are both journalists investigating clues. I don't know, I felt like it really distracted from the narrative, and leaves you kind of at a loss for why they chose to have this art. It just felt trippy, to be frank. You would walk into a setting, and it would be this was right at the beginning, this is where the tutorial takes place, you're in a hospital. Super realistic setting. In fact, it's the background video playing right now. It's a very realistic setting of like a rundown hospital, but all of the people and characters standing in it are these kind of de-rendered polygon states. It's super trippy, felt really odd playing through it. And you'd adjust to it, and then it would switch to a setting where the background wasn't realistic anymore. It was a polygon setting, polygon background as well. And so it was just like, why did they have that at all? Why didn't they just do it all polygon, etc., etc. The game also felt like you were interacting with a story more than you are playing a game. And I don't really mean that in a good way. I do really like story-based games, but in this case, the gameplay is super slow, and it's essentially just a walking simulator, while the game reads you a story. So again, the walking simulator is the reason I need to know the sprint mechanic, because if I have to walk everywhere and just listen to exposition, I want to be able to get to places faster, and it just drives me nuts, especially if you're someone like me and you like to explore every nook and cranny of everything. After an hour and a half into the game, I feel like I know next to nothing about what the actual plot is, and I dig into every piece of dialogue and read through everything available as I play. So far, all I know from my time playing is essentially that neither of our protagonists know that how their car crashes happened, and that they are both journalists. The only other thing is that Richard is looking for his kid and his wife, but he's cheating on his wife, and it seems like she just left him. But other than that, we know zilch. This would be bad enough in a regular game that there's not really anything pushing the story, but in a story-driven game, it just feels really empty. Essentially, an hour and a half into the game, the whole game has been one of the characters' wives or doctors telling them to go do something, and then them doing it. And that's been the whole game so far. One thing the game does do pretty well is setting the tone of the setting and building an atmosphere for the world that we're in. The music and sound effects to the cinematics and background info we overhear while walking around alludes to a very deep lore of the world, which is actually really exciting to me because I do like games with a lot of story. I just wish there was a story actually driving the plot so far. The tutorial in-game doesn't teach you how to run. I know I just talked about that a second ago, but you have to look under the controls in the options menu to even find it out, which I didn't even find out until after I did my hour and a half of playing and wrote this whole thing up. I only realized it because I went back into the options to check out some different system requirements. The game, I thought this was really cool too. The game does have a lot of Orwellian themes, and I think it presents them pretty well. The protagonists are constantly told not to question what's going on through miscellaneous means. Mostly it's people blowing off their questions or changing the subjects. And the people in the setting are all willing to just accept anything that is happening to them and not question it. The game is really easy. As for system requirements, the game is really easy for my computer to handle. Even while recording and uploading for YouTube, I was still on all epic level, the highest level settings just as default. So pretty much a potato could play this game. That's one of the benefits of doing the art style that they chose to do. And there should obviously be no issues on console. One last thing to note that I almost forgot about. They literally... Okay, so this was something else that I realized when I went back to the game. They literally put ads out on their game's opening menu screen. In the bottom right-hand corner, they are small, and they're only in that bottom corner, but, like, why are they there? Why are you advertising games in your game? I didn't pay for the game just to have more advertisements for other games, especially when the game's price was $29.99 on Steam, right? So, in conclusion, to be honest, I don't really think that so far I can really recommend this game to someone just yet. After an hour and a half, it really is just a walking simulator, and if that's your thing, you will like this, but if it's not, then you probably won't like it. It's currently priced on Steam for $29.99, and on console it's available for $39.99. Honestly, I wouldn't spend my money on it. If you really want it, I would recommend waiting for a sale. And if you're unsure, still on the fence, or while you're waiting for that sale, I'd recommend that you actually check out my LT Play series, because at least for now, I am doing a series on it. At least my first hour and a half is already out, right? Though, to be honest, I don't know how long I will keep playing. I have an hour and a half in. If it gets better, I'll let you guys know. And I do plan on eventually, assuming that I can finish the game or get to a good point in the game, eventually doing a review of the game. So far, was it worth the money? I don't think so. Am I looking forward to playing more of it? A little, but to be honest, that's mostly because I'm still trying to figure out what the heck is going on, and that drives me to come back for now. But I don't know if that's like, it's just how I am. I have to finish stories, but I only have an hour and a half in it. So take that as you will. But that said, thank you for joining me. That is my first impressions of State of Mind, a sci-fi dystopian world. Give it a try. Let me know what you guys think about the game in the comments below. Make sure to leave a like button if you enjoyed the video. It helps out a great deal. Make sure to click the subscribe button as well as that bell notification icon in the corner. That way you can be notified whenever I come out with a new video. I come out with new videos every day, so I'm always sending new content your way. That said, thank you for joining me. LT out.